What's up, Canelo? So what's up to the people watching this channel? Yeah, he's a little busy. What is up, guys? This is Carlos. Welcome to my channel, Los Car 50. Today we have some more goodies to install into the Cobra. It's been a minute since we've done something to the car, so let's take a look at what we got. So I got a set of BC Racing coilovers for the Cobra. I found a heck of a deal on Facebook, and couldn't pass up the opportunity. Basically, it's a brand new set, and I'm honestly really excited to do this. I haven't really unboxed this completely yet, but these are going to be the rear spring perches, springs. Here we have the front wheels, really nice. So let's dig into it and install these bad boys into the car. So before we get into the install, the car right now is on H&R race springs with no isolators, and fronts has Steeda X2 ball joints. So as of now, the car at the front measures 25¼ inches from the bottom of the concrete to the center of the fender, and I plan on keeping it that same height because this car is already very low, and for the area that I live in, it's not great to get any lower than this, because I've already had a few little instances where it's kind of hard to drive it around in some spots. So we're going to keep the front the same height. I like this height, it's really nice. And the rear, on the passenger side, I measured actually a 1/4 inch difference between this side versus the driver's side, and I plan on keeping it level. So that's another great thing about coilovers, is that you can set it equal as needed or adjust as needed. So I want to, if anything, I'm going to level it to match the other side, which the other side measured 25¾ inches from the bottom concrete to the center line of the fender. And if anything, I might drop it like another 1/4 inch, but that's still questionable, so we'll see about that. So we have the passenger side fully disassembled as far as the shock and the spring goes, and I'm fixing to go to the driver's side to show you guys what you got to take off in order to drop this loose. And here's the old H&R race spring and the Maximum Motorsports caster camber plates. This side, this one's giving me a little bit of trouble as far as this nut right here, but I put some PB Blaster on there, let it sit for a little bit, and try to take it off with my impact. But in the meantime, just to touch base, so here we're looking at the driver's side. In order to remove the caliper, there's two 15mm bolts that go right here on the back side of this knuckle, which are these right here. So we got two of these. Take those off first. So once you get your caliper off, set that off to the side. Don't let it hanging off. Put something to hold it or zip tie it somewhere. In my case, I'm using a jack stand to hold it. And then from there, you can put a jack stand, hold underneath this control arm somehow, the best you can. And then from there, and that's just to apply some pressure. And then from there, we're gonna jump on to removing the shock, which consists of two bolts that are held on right here on the knuckle. And for that, you use a 24 and a 21mm socket, as well as a top. This one right here, at least on these conies, this is a 24mm nut that has to come off. Take that off, take these two off, and then once you do that, you can lightly let pressure release from the jack, and your shock will come out. And then again, once you get that shock off, you're going to put your jack stand, hold it right here underneath your control arm. You're going to remove this 15mm nut for the sway bar link in order to get the sway bar out the way and allow you to drop your control arm, in order for you to remove your spring, which essentially is how this side looks like. That's what I did. I took off that 15mm. It allowed me to drop this whole control arm, and then I was able to remove the spring. So I went ahead and decided to clean up this area because it was filthy. I've cleaned it in the past, but you know, I drive this car and it gets dirty. But now that I have everything apart, might as well give it a nice little clean, take off all the dust, little debris, little small rocks and whatnot. So before I install the coilover, I got me these plates right here. These are called scuff plates, made by Maker's Garage. I'll post a link in the description of where I got these from. Essentially, they are what they sound like. It's a scuff plate. So you set this like so, right here, and then you go ahead and put your nuts on there. So what this does is pretty much keeps you from scratching up your paint on your strut tower like this. You know, whoever installed the caster camber plates, they didn't have that, so you see these little marks here and stuff. That's what these guys prevent that from happening. So it'll look for a much cleaner look. And besides, when you do maximum motorsport caster camber plates, you have to drill a hole, an extra hole for the mount, and I'll want to cover that up and not leave it exposed. So that's why I went ahead and got these plates, because by placing this here, it covers up that hole and it just looks so much better. These are labeled. We got R, L, and I'm working on the passenger side right now, so I'm grabbing the right hand side and put these on. Alright, we got the coilovers fully installed now. Everything tightened up. And something I must say about this is that it gives a much cleaner look just having this whole spring and strut as one assembly, hence the coilover, versus having your shock and your spring that would mount right there. I don't know, it looks more simple, less parts to deal with, easier to remove when needed. I like it. This is how the scuff plate looks like. It looks pretty good. It cleans up the top. Here's the other side. Now we got the knob. That's really, really cool actually, to be able to do that. To adjust the dampening. And of course you can adjust your camber by loosening these, and this whole thing kind of goes back and forth as needed. And this is driver's side. Same way. Very glad how it came out. So these are the Coney adjustable shocks that the car had. It looked a little rough. There's no telling how long they've been on the car. I have to go through the paperwork. So what I just did, I just pressed them down, and this one is slowly coming back out. So this might still work, but this one is completely shot out. Like, this part is not even moving. So I'm actually really glad that I was able to put these coilovers on, because otherwise I thought these were good. So today's another day. Last time I was only able to do the fronts, the coilovers. It got too dark and it was just a really humid, rainy day, so I was like, you know, we'll save it for another time, but we're gonna be doing the rears right now, so let's hop on to that one. Alright, so I'm pretty close to the point where I'm going to start loosening up all the fastening hardware that holds the IRS, to where I'm going to drop it down a little bit, and I'm going to go over pretty much what I'm going to do. First of all, I got my jack stands on the torque box on both sides of the car. Then I have my jack just lightly putting pressure up on the differential for now. So what I'm going to do, because I want this whole IRS to kind of go down, pivot down, I'm going to loosen up my IRS. I have low profile bolts, and the size that fits this is a hex 5/16. From there, I'm gonna loosen up the nut that holds the shock to the lower control arm. That's gonna be a 18mm bolt. And then from there, we come up here, remove 2 each of those, I believe it's 19mm nuts that holds a shock to the tower for the rear. And last but not least, you have to remove. Alright, it's a little hard to see, but there's some hanger brackets for the exhaust tips. These are held by 10mm bolts, which are these right here. And then after that, lightly start releasing the jack. Make sure nothing's binding, and then hopefully just drop it enough to where I can take out the springs. As far as adjustments go, I would strongly suggest just to follow the product installation guide. It really details, like, step by step all the adjustments required to do it properly in this car. So that's what I would recommend to everybody. So these are one of the rear spring perches to where you can adjust it, and these kind of you can modify the ride height by adjusting this as well as the shock itself. So what I'm going to do is make sure, since I'm just kind of guessing at this point how low or high the car is going to be, I'm going to make sure there's a 1/2 inch gap between the top or the bottom of this flange to the top of this nut, and just go from there. So I'm at the point where I got the shocks on, the springs with the perches, everything's tightened up, everything's adjusted. I'm gonna put the wheels back on, drop the car, see how it sits, and depending on how the ride height is, I might have to adjust what I did. Alright, so we got the car all sitting on all 4 tires now. Quite honestly, the stance isn't too bad. The back is pretty much almost where I wanted it. And this is the fact, this is like not even considering that I haven't driven it yet. So once I drive it around town, go through a little few bumps here and there, everything's gonna settle more in place, and then I'll be able to fine tune everything more properly. But for the most part, this is pretty much the full install. I'm really excited to know how these feel. I might record some of that. I'm not sure yet, but nonetheless, really happy, really excited about having these. And I can't wait to fine tune the dampening on these for smooth or harder dampening. But either way, that's all for the install. Thank you guys for watching. Those Car 50 out.